themselves to the neck in it, though that was now considered a little extreme and old-fashioned. Abigail liked going to the pump-room, for at the age of 18 she craved outings and company, and apparently her exquisite youthful beauty was much admired, though she did not receive many invitations to private parties, or even to more public entertainments. She was not, after all, quite respectable, despite the fact that Grandmamma was eminently so. Camille had always steadfastly refused to accompany them anywhere they might meet other people in a social setting. On the rare occasions when she did step out, usually with Abby, she did so with stealth, a veil draped over the brim of her bonnet and pulled down over her face, for more than anything else she feared being recognized. Not today, however, and, she vowed to herself, never again. She was done with the old life, and if anyone recognized her and chose to give her the cut direct, then she would give it right back. It was time for a new life and new acquaintances, and if there were a few bumps to traverse in moving from one world to the other, well then, she would deal with them. After Grandmamma and Abby had left, she dressed in one of the more severe and conservative of her walking dresses and donned a bonnet to match. She put on comfortable shoes, since the sort of dainty slippers she had always worn in the days when she travelled everywhere by carriage were useless now, except to wear indoors. Finally, taking up her gloves and reticule, she stepped out onto the cobbled street without waiting for a servant to open and hold the door for her and look askance at her lone state, perhaps even try to stop her or send a footman trailing after her. She stood outside for a few moments, assailed by a sudden terror bordering upon panic, and wondering if perhaps, after all, she should scurry back inside to hide in darkness and safety. In her whole life, she had rarely stepped beyond the confines of house or walled park, unaccompanied by a family member or a servant, often both. But those days were over, even though Grandmamma would doubtless argue the point. Camille squared her shoulders, lifted her chin, and strode off downhill in the general direction of Bath Abbey. Her actual destination, however, was a house on Northumberland Place, near the Guildhall, and the market and the Pulteney Bridge, which spanned the River Avon with grandiose elegance. It was a building indistinguishable from many of the other Georgian edifices with which the city abounded, solid, yet pleasing to the eye, and 3 stories high, not counting the basement and the attic, except that this one was actually 3 houses that had been made into one in order to accommodate an institution, an orphanage, to be precise. It was where Anna Snow, more recently Lady Anastasia Westcott, now the Duchess of Netherby, had spent her childhood. It was where she had taught for several years after she grew up. It was from there that she had been summoned to London by a solicitor's letter, and it was in London that their paths and their histories had converged, Camille's and Anastasia's, the one to be elevated to heights beyond her wildest imaginings, the other to be plunged to depths lower than her worst nightmares. Anastasia, also a daughter of the Earl of Riverdale, had been consigned to the orphanage, by him at a very young age on the death of her mother. She had grown up there, supported financially, but quite ignorant of who she was. She had not even known her real name. She had been Anna Snow, Snow being her mother's maiden name, though she had not realized that either. Camille, on the other hand, born 3 years after Anastasia, had been brought up to a life of privilege and wealth and entitlement with Harry and Abigail, her younger siblings. None of them had known of Anastasia's existence. Well, Mamma had, but she had always assumed that the child Papa secretly supported at an orphanage in Bath was the love-child of a mistress. It was only after his death, several months ago, that the truth came out. And what a catastrophic truth it was. Alice Snow, Anastasia's mother, had been Papa's legitimate wife. They had married secretly in Bath, though she had left him a year or so later when her health failed, and returned to her parents' home near Bristol, taking their child with her. She had died some time later of consumption, but not